Hey everyone, my name is Kyle from motorcyclehabit.com, and today I want to go through some tips for how to paint your motorcycle frame without removing the engine. So when I first started restoring motorcycles during college, the first few I would take the engine completely out of the frame, and I just created way more work for myself than I needed to. If you're going to restore it for the concourse and you plan on winning every motorcycle show that you enter, yes, maybe you might want to take the engine out. But for those of us who actually ride our motorcycles and not just sit there and look pretty, you absolutely do not need to take your engine out of your frame. That's just way too much work. So I paint all of my frames black because that's what they came as stock, and it's just easier and takes a lot less time to go back with that same original black color. There's a lot less prep that needs to go into it. So I want to go through some of those preparation steps with you. First of all, you've heard this a million times, and I'm going to say it again because it's absolutely important. Preparation and the paint foundation that you put on the frame and the work to prepare before you ever put on primer is absolutely the most important thing you're going to do. 90% of the time and the work you put into painting your frame is prep work. So first of all, take off your tank. With old Japanese motorcycles, there's usually one bolt down here, and then there's two rubber things on the side of the frame, and your tank will just slide right off. European bikes, sometimes there's a bolt right here in the middle. That's all I have to do on mine is take off this one center bolt, then the tank comes off. There's usually only one or two bolts though. Your tank comes off quick, and then make sure you turn your petcocks off and disconnect. If you have one or two fuel lines, depending on your bike, take off your fuel lines. That's all you'll need to do to take off your tank. Next, take off your seat. Any side covers you have. I like to take off the instrument cluster, whether you have one or two. I disconnect all that. And then I also, every bike I've worked on has two bolts on the front of the headlight. So I take both of those bolts off. And then I put just a grocery bag over the headlight bucket, and then put some tape, masking tape around it so paint can't get in on the headlight. So once your major components are off, I'll put the bike on the center stand and then a jack underneath, whether your bike is front heavy or back heavy. Put the jack on there to balance it out so it's not going to tip over. Then I take off the wheels as well. That way, if you're going to paint your front forks, you can do that at the exact same time. And if you take off your back wheel, you can get to your rear swing arm and all those little cracks and crevices that are down here around your chain and your swing arm. Get your chain out of the way, which is usually pretty easy once you take off your rear wheel. Next, electrical. If you either wrap all the electrical in, sometimes I've even used paper towels. I'll stick a paper towel and then tape the ends and cover the whole wiring harness just with something, because you're going to get overspray on it, and you don't want black or whatever color paint all over your wires. It's going to look bad. It's going to cause them to crack sooner. So make sure you cover all that stuff. What else? Okay, so next in preparation, you're going to have bolts all around your engine that hold your engine to your frame. Things like your horn is probably going to be attached to your frame as well. All those little things, make sure you use masking tape and paper towels. Next in preparation, I always take a wire brush, and I'll wire brush in all the little cracks and crevices, get all the big nasty chunks off. After wire brush, then then I take out my sandpaper, and I probably start with a 150 grit and sand the whole frame smooth. Once you're at 150 grit, then you look for any rusty spots. If you've got rusty spots, make sure you hit those with harder sandpaper or whatever you need to do, a grinding wheel, something, to get that down to bare metal. You don't want there to be any rust on the frame whatsoever. If there's spots that are completely rusted through, I would get the help of a friend who has a welding machine and cut out that chunk of frame and replace it. You don't want there to be rust underneath your paint because it can keep creeping around and growing. Yes, get to bare metal. After you do all that, then absolutely use a product called wax and grease remover. That will take all of the excess grime and grease and oil that you didn't get while sanding. Even your fingers have natural oils in them, and if you touch your frame and then primer over that, that oil is still going to be underneath the primer, and your paint won't last near as long. So cover everything, make sure it's sanded, get down to bare metal in the spots that you need to. If the paint's still okay, then just rough up the paint just a little bit so that the primer will stick to it. Next, you can actually prime. So wax and grease remover, then you can prime it. And I like to use the green self-etching primer if it's down to bare metal. If not, then you can just use a regular sandable filler primer. They're two different products. O'Reilly sells the self-etching primer in green. That's the one that I like to use, just an aerosol can. If it's not down to bare metal, then I just get the dupli-color sandable filler primer from O'Reilly. They're $7 or $8 per can. After you prime the whole thing, if there's any spots that still look bad, then just sand them again. I don't wet sand my frame. I'm not that OCD about it, but if you are, great, good on you. The next is paint. After you get all primed and that's done, then you can use, I just use black, usually semi-gloss or gloss, dupli-color paint. And that process really doesn't take that long if you do your prep work. I'm all about prep work. And another tip that I've learned over the years, if you think, oh, I'll be careful, I'm not going to get overspray on that thing, yes, you will. If you paint in a garage or even outside, overspray is going to get everywhere. So make sure you cover your entire engine with either plastic or paper towels or masking tape. Whatever you have, just make sure it's covered, because the last thing you want is to have black little overspray specks all over that nice aluminum engine. You're never going to get it off. So be smart about it, take your time and cover everything, and your paint job should turn out great. Okay, one last addition I wanted to make before I let you go. I want to talk about the importance of having a good respirator. Now, a respirator is very different than just one of those little white, cheap things you put over your mouth that you get from any hardware store. That is not okay for priming and painting. You want to get a respirator. You don't have to have the face shield if you don't want, but at least get one that has these detachable or replaceable filter pads. That is an absolute must when you're going to prime and paint with this stuff. The chemicals in primer and paint are bad for you, and even what's worse for you is when you're sanding your old frame and all that old paint and stuff is coming off of it. A lot of it has lead in the paint, and it can absolutely cause diseases and cancer and horrible things. So you can even get a cheap one from Harbor Freight, I don't care. There's coupons for $12 that you can find online for a respirator. Those work okay. Just get a respirator. So thank you for your time. Thanks for watching the video. Remember, if you want to learn more, I've got even more tips and tricks in an article that I wrote. go to motorcyclehabit.com/frame. Thanks for watching.